Okay, so people will start to join now, but I'll kick off at 2 o'clock. Okay, well, hello and a warm welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Mark Morley, and I'm excited to be hosting another showcase event for the Good Governance Academy. We're delighted to see so many people online, not only from our local region, but from across the globe. Please do let us know where you're from in the chat window below. It's always great to see where people are joining from. I see there's a lot of people still filing in. So in the meantime, just some quick housekeeping before we continue. If you can't see the control panel along the bottom of your screen, please press the Alt key on your keyboard. That will give you access to the chat box, the question box, and the reaction buttons. We'd love to see your reactions to the conversation, so please hit the applause or the thumbs up if the comments strike a chord with you. I'll also be very happy to field your questions to our guests, so please record these in the question box, not in the chat box, as they'll likely get lost in the comments. So any questions that you pose, I'll ask these either during the session or at the end in the Q&A session. For those who are not familiar with the Good Governance Academy, we're a non-profit organisation that was established by Professor Mervyn King in 2019. We collaborate with universities, business schools, professional bodies and other organisations around the world to share information on business critical issues. We run regular webinars on current topics, in addition to hosting colloquia twice a year, and our 13th edition will run in May, so please look out on our website for that. We also run these showcase events periodically, which promote courses that the Academy has endorsed. The endorsement program involves an assessment against our specific criteria, just to ensure they align with our own focus areas and to ensure the highest international standards are maintained. It's available for courses of all formats, and if you have a course you'd like to put forward for endorsement, please visit our website or feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. The endorsement program was developed to support the Academy's alignment with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals of collaboration and quality education. And we're delighted to bring another endorsed course to you today. And with that, I'd like to introduce today's guest and our course creator, Turid Solvang, who is the founder of FutureBoards in Norway. They're an independent global network of corporate governance experts and practitioners. So Turid, welcome to the showcase. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please provide us with an introduction to yourself and to FutureBoards before we go on to discuss your ESG competence program?
I can, and thanks a lot, Mark, for inviting me to this webinar and to the prestigious Good Governance Academy, and to talk about the ESG for Boards program. And thanks a lot for endorsing it. That is highly appreciated. So as co-founder of the Norwegian Institute of Directors, which I headed for 10 years, I was fortunate to be chair of ECODA, the European Confederation of Directors Associations, and by that also be a part of the global network of Directors Institutes. So a decade ago, the idea to create a global network of corporate governance practitioners and experts was born, and I named it FutureBoards. And the vision was, and still is, to help build sustainable and borderless boards. And in this context, I must mention that the launch of the King 4 report in Johannesburg in 2017 was a tipping point for me. And why was that? I met Mervyn, the king, the rock star of corporate governance, and the godfather of integrated reporting or integrated thinking. And since then, my mission has been to support board directors creating long-term value for all by offering physical and digital arenas for corporate decision makers to exchange and enhance their knowledge and insight. And one of these arenas is the ESG for Boards Competence program that I have developed in collaboration with DNV, which is one of the world's largest assurance companies, starting with insurance ships. And we know that is hugely important. So if they can assure ships, they can also assure the competence of the boards. So I guess we will come back to more details about the program later on.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, thanks so much, Turid. So I think rather than typically with these things, we kind of run through the course and demonstrate what it looks like. But I think what would be nice is rather than do that, let's discuss the need for ESG competency in general. And then we can look at how your program addresses those needs, and we can discuss, ESG in a broader context. And then at the end, maybe we can, discuss the course in more detail. So I think if I may, let's dive straight in and consider strategy in an ESG context. So if we look at the role of ESG in strategy, many boards struggle with integrating ESG into corporate strategy beyond compliance. So how can we help board directors develop a truly driven ESG strategy?
Yeah, I thought I'll start with reminding ourselves, what is the ESG agenda really about? What is it? And as we know, the E is about how your company affects and is affected by the environment. And that is a topic that is well known and by now familiar to most of us. And the S, the social criteria, is about the relationship your company has with people and institutions in the community that you operate. It is a bit less focused area than the E, but on the rise, linked to human rights, labor conditions, diversity, and inclusion. And then it's the G, the governance, that addresses the internal decision-making system, a much less debated area, but increasingly more important to the shareholders. And according to our good friend, Professor Mervyn King, the G should be put first, and change the acronym to GES, because without governance, the company cannot exist. So simply put, the ESG is an investor tool to evaluate the company. It is a framework and a system to assess whether the company is likely to survive and thrive in the future in order to create money for the shareholders in the long run. And the basic idea is that by creating value for the society, respecting workers and human rights, and ensuring that the solid governance system is in place, the company will succeed. And as we all know, there was at first there was the corporate social responsibility. And as a part of that, companies adopted one or more of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And they set sustainability targets, and they developed sustainability strategies as a separate issue. And these tended to be easy decisions for boards and companies to make. And currently, this has evolved into the ESG. And the development has been driven by the investor communities and the society, as well as politicians and regulators. And we must say, of which the latter seems to have had the toughest impact. And you could say that is only natural, because it's always a smart thing to comply with the law. Yeah. So to help board directors develop a truly purpose-driven ESG strategy beyond compliance, the focus should be on integrated ESG as a core value and a long-term growth driver, not as an add-on or a separate issue. And that is at the ESG for Boards program, we encourage this mind shift by providing real-life stories that show how strong ESG performance leads to sustainable growth and financial return. I think I might stop there if you thought I answered your question today.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Turid. So if we consider the evolving trends and challenges with ESG, how if we go back to your program, how does your program equip board members to anticipate and respond to emerging challenges? And do you have any examples or insights from the course that you could share?
Yeah, and this program educates board members on current and emerging global and national trends related to the investor perspective, the stakeholders' expectations, and the regulatory requirements. And by focusing on best practices for incorporating ESG into board level discussion, the program helps board create a long-term vision for sustainable business practices. And it encouraged them to align the ESG goals with the overall corporate strategy and ensuring that sustainability is embedded at the highest level of decision making. So we provide knowledge about ESG related regulations and evolving corporate governance codes and compliance standards at both global, regional, and national levels.
Okay.
Yeah. So as examples, it's the steady streams of EU regulations. It's the updated OECD G20 corporate governance principles, as well as examples of national regulations and recommendation. And we are, of course, very much looking forward to take a close look at the King 5 report, as it probably will come before we have the full session of the program and what's different there. Yeah.
Right. Great. I often find it's kind of an unfortunate truth that we have to manage investor expectations. They obviously have a lot of drive and a lot of strength in how these things evolve. So would you say that firstly, investors are still demanding greater ESG transparency? And if they are, how can we help board directors navigate the balance between the financial performance and ESG commitments?
Well, lately, and even before mid-January this year, the ESG agenda have received extensive criticism and was referred to and still is by some circles as woke. And one tweet, you may have seen it, ESG is the devil, was tweeted by Elon Musk. That's a while ago. And we also see that some of the major players are changing their direction or toning down the focus on renewable or sustainable solutions. And we have companies like Shell, Unilever, and BlackRock, who has been beacons of this. And also companies like Accenture, Citigroup, and Deloitte are scaling back on the DE&I commitments, which I find deeply worrying. But at the same time, the head of the Norwegian oil fund, Nicolai Tangen, he is convinced that ESG and return go hand in hand. So that is why at the program, we invite representatives from the investor community, such as the oil fund, to explain what they expect from their investee companies and why. And I don't know if the Norwegian oil fund is familiar to you, but it has a small stake in more than 8,500 companies across the world. And on average, the fund holds 1.5% of all listed companies. And that makes the Norwegian oil fund the world's largest single investor. And the purpose of the fund is to promote long-term value creation in their investee companies and minimize negative effects on the environment and society. And this is how responsible investment contributes to the fund's objective of highest possible return with acceptable risk. And that is something you have to define, of course. And ahead of all AGMs in their investee companies, the fund will publish how they're going to vote. So even if they are a small shareholder, their vote has tremendous impact, as many investors will follow their lead. And last year, they voted against the Tesla CEO's pay package, which caused a bit of a stir here and there, and they're likely to do that again. So what they are saying has an impact not only on their investee companies, but also on governance worldwide. And they're quite transparent about their views. As I said, they will publish what they vote, but also on the website, you will find their expectation documents and positioning papers on different topics that they are engaged in. So while meeting short-term financial targets is important to make the company survive, demonstrating how the long-term ESG strategies contribute to the sustainable business growth can help investors see the bigger picture. And I'd like to quote the head of the Norwegian oil fund, Nicolai Tangen, again. He actually is painting the bigger picture, because he says, when we are talking about ESG, we are talking about the future of humankind. And that is a strong message, I say, to all other investors and board directors and companies. And
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a very strong message.
I'd say
Thanks,
so.
thanks, Turid. So, if we turn now to board composition and work processes, if we start with building an ESG competent board, there's obviously skills that are needed in boardrooms, and those skills are changing. Does the ESG competence program help directors build the right skills and mindsets to lead into this new area?
Yeah, I'd say that the program first and foremost focuses on the mindset, because this is the biggest challenge for board members. While traditionally board members are used to not just report to, but to take care of the shareholders' value, the value of the shares of the company. That has been the primary interest, and to some degree it still is, because it is the investors that are nominating and electing the board members. So still they are dependent on the views of their investor. But in addition to that, they have to change their mindset and see the whole stakeholder picture. And that is just a few years ago we started to talk about that, except for Mervyn, because he's talking about this for many years. But to many other jurisdictions, this is a very new thought. And in the UK, keeping in mind, they're using phrases like that, take into account the stakeholder views, etc., etc. But what we do know is that when stakeholders other than the shareholders are moving to campaigns or whatever, like the Client Earth organization that went to a lawsuit to the board directors of Shell for not taking enough consideration of the environmental issues into the strategies. The lawsuit was dismissed eventually, but that shows us what stakeholders really can do and how they can harm the company, not just by not buying the products, but actually harming the reputation of the company and putting them to the fore. So this is key of what we're focusing on in this program, that they have to, I shouldn't use the word take into account, but be mindful of the whole stakeholder group and the wider stakeholder group, and also shift the mindset from the financial reporting to the long-term value creation and the integrated thinking on how to do that. So that is, and with regards to skills, I think there isn't a boardroom big enough to room all the different skills and capabilities that we do need in the boardroom, and that is why I'm so concerned about the mindset and the perspectives coming in here, even more than the skills that they do have, because you can always have an advisor or an expert on the board to really give you those skills.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Turid. When we consider the board, the management collaboration on the board, are there best practices, and are these covered in the course that we can teach to strengthen the collaboration between boards and management when implementing the ESG strategies?
Yeah, so what we do, and I'm a bit conflicted about this question as well, because I'd like to talk about ESG factors as totally integrated in the strategy and not as a separate strategy. But even so, there are some specific factors, and this is also what the program focuses on. How how does the board need to work differently with the strategy, considering the whole ESG agenda? How does it change? Not only change the mindset, but how does it change the work processes? And one of the things that is hugely important is the dialogue with the management team, the continuous dialogue and sharing all these perspectives. And in many companies now, the management team would have much more information and be much more competent than the average board member. So that would also be a requirement from the management to make sure that the boards have the relevant information that they need to actually make these judgment calls. And then again, we know that the board shouldn't have all the answers, but they should know enough to ask the right and critical questions, and also to assess the answer, of course, whether it's valid or not. So I'd say that the dialogue between the board and the management needs to be more in depth, perhaps, than it has to been before. It has to be more frequent, and that is also because of the rapid changes surrounding us now. They need to be more hands-on, probably, than they used to be. There is a quote I used to like. It said that boards should be brains on, while top management should be hands on. But I think we have to. I think we have to combine that.
I like that.
Mm.
So focusing on the board still, if we look at the chair of the future, we know leadership at the board board level is critical, but how can we prepare future board chairs to drive ESG transformation effectively? And is this something that the course focuses on?
Yeah, and if everyone is listening very careful, I can quote a research from Corn and Ferry, what is expected from the chair of the future. And just listen to this list. So he, as it usually is, but he or she should have emotional intelligence, aligned with exceptional communication skills, resilience, self-mastery, and composure in a crisis, intense curiosity and adaptability to difference and change. Humility. I'm not even halfway of this list. So and I might not go through all of it because we do that at the program, but it's about interpersonal skills, and it says grounded in intellectual superior capabilities, high self-mastery, and proven experience of governance. So it's huge. Chairs of the future have a huge task to perform. And as boardrooms are filled with, not with people similar to himself against, or having the same backgrounds, coming from the same industries, etc. You have a room filled with people with different backgrounds, with different perspectives, different views on how this company should be conducted. So the chair is hugely important, and this is what we are discussing at the program. How can we find all these qualities within one person, and how should this person lead the board in a way to make sure that all perspectives are being heard, and also to manage to make the right decision at the end of this discussion, and to change that if that's necessary too. So yeah.
Can we move now on to reporting and control and assurance? I think we're all painfully aware of the challenges associated with ESG reporting, but what would you say are the most common challenges companies face with ESG reporting?
It's the narrative. It's too big. It's too much. I don't understand it. Why do we have to do this? It's like the resistance. The resistance itself, I'd say, is the challenge. So what we need to do is to break it down. What is it all about? And we see also that many companies, they start with the reporting. And they have had these sustainability reports, which often has been very good looking. They have had front pages in green with trees and children, and making everything look good. And sometimes, and that is the legal requirement, or the recommendations are also on the reporting. So that's where many companies start the journey. And it could be okay, but after the report is written, you have to look back on what's really in there. Is it relevant? Is it relevant to our company? Because the report should not include this and that has nothing to do with your product or services, or what you're doing. So it should be relevant. It should be understandable. Because even if the reports are mostly used by the shareholder and the investor community, other people should also be able to read the report and understand what does this really mean, and how will this affect your financial return, and how will this affect our society. So it should be understandable. It should also be possible. It should be accountable. So you should backtrack and say, okay, did you do that? And I think that's where many of the problems in the US arise, because they might be aware of the legal responsibilities. If I promise to do this and that, and say that I've done this and that, then you can be sued because you didn't do this and that. So this is work in progress. But my message would be, keep it simple. Keep it simple. Write about what is relevant to your company, and don't leave to the communication department or the PR company to write that report. You have to engage as a board member to actually read the report. We are used to reading the financial reports, and then we could put 2 lines under the final result, and then but with these reports you can't do that. So you have to put your mind into that, and what I really do. So I'd say that a 300+ page report has never changed the world. Never will.
No. Sad but true, yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of regulations and standards, so there's multiple reporting frameworks. There's IFRS, ISSB, GRI, and with all these frameworks out there that the directors have to navigate, how can we help them not only understand the complexities of these frameworks, but ensure that they do comply with them?
Well, the alphabet soup, as Mervyn dubbed it many years ago. Many others are using that, and we're still trying to untangle everything. What does all these acronyms really mean? And as you and I, and probably all of the listeners know, that Mervyn has been, a beacon here. It's called Beacon of Light in this program, and talking about integrated thinking. You have to think in an integrated way, and by that creating the Integrated Reporting Council, which is now a part of the ISSB, and it has been the development, and I think that is really a good thing, because most board members, or all board members, I hope, are familiar with the IFRS. It is the standard for financial reporting, and that is very well known. So a couple of years ago, the IFRS Foundation announced the formation of the ISSB, which have now merged with the Value Foundation and the Value Reporting Foundation and all of these other things. So trying to put it together. So I believe that now we have basically 2 big, we call it framework. It's the ISSB and then this EFRS, which is the EFRS, the European framework, coming from the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive. So there are people working out there outside of us to try to compile this and put it together and make sure that people are not confused. And then again, board members should not know all the nitty-gritty details of what's expected in these reports, because they need to rely also on the management team that they make sure that they do know, what is this, what does it mean, and why do we have it? What's the intention of the Corporate Social Responsibility Directive? What's the intention of the ISSB? Why do we have this? And then how can I make best use of that? So what we're doing in the program, we're talking about these trends, how it is evolving. And so we invite, like Jonathan Rabray from the ISSB, to ask him, what are you doing right now? Where are you in the process? And we had Lee Roberts from the South African, and she is talking about the integrated thinking concept. So to put all this together, and by this, again, changing the mindset, changing how do we think about these things. So yeah, it's not an easy task, but to make board members, should I say, confident that they can discuss these issues. So when one very experienced board member said, oh, you know, ESG and SDGs, what are really the difference? So, and then you can be a bit worried about that. So I think boards, and perhaps that has been my mission to move boards to think differently. When I started FutureBoards, I said that we need a revolution in the boardrooms, and revolution in the boardroom, I think it's really small steps that would be considered a revolution, because it's very conservative, and it has been conducted in the same way for many years, and to change that is what we're trying to do also in this program.
Now, you mentioned small steps and then bite-sized chunks. I think that's one of the great things about this program, is that there is so much out there that it's for the board members, it's almost like, you know, sucking on a fire hydrant. There's so much out there. So it's, what should you be paying attention? Where should your focus be? So that's one of the nice things about this program that you've got, is that it is just making sure people are looking at the things that, you know, are relevant, are necessary, but it's without all this other stuff, all the other noise that's going on. It's just making sure they're focused only what's on really important, what's going to make the impact.
Yeah. And then, no, so the AI discussion, artificial intelligence, you have the cybersecurity, you have lots and lots of topics that all are fighting to get on the very top of the board agendas, and all of this. And perhaps that's when we need to listen very carefully to Mervyn. It's integrated, everything is connected. So we need to think about this in a connected way. How you use AI? Well, it uses tremendous data power, which is hurting our environment. So to learn to see all these connections, if we do that, how does that impact that? This is what it is about.
If we can turn now to stakeholder communication, which I think is a bit of a spicy topic. Not only is it tricky to know exactly who our stakeholders are, but we need to know what to share with them and when. So ESG reporting is often seen as complex and maybe disconnected from real impact. So does your program help board members improve stakeholder communication and governance?
Yeah, and I think it starts, the first step is for the board to acknowledge that they do have stakeholders, and how the company affects those stakeholders, and vice versa, and how they ultimately impacts the company's performance. And the stakeholders, they could be like the employees. If they don't like your company, if they don't like how you govern the company, your products, whatever, they don't want to work there. They want to come to the company. It's for the customers, the clients. If they don't like how you behave, if you're destroying their community, they won't buy your products. We've seen not the rise, the opposite of the rise of the sales of Tesla in Norway. Is crashing. It's crashing. And it's not because the car isn't good enough anymore. Probably is. So that is how clients are affecting your company, and also investors, as we have been talking about. And then I don't know if you've moved from talking about the millennial generation to the XYZ generation. There's lots of generations out there, but especially the millennials may have different views on the responsibility of the company. How to what degree they are responsible to the society, because they see that if we continue doing what we have done up to now, there may not be a planet to inherit going some generations forward. Me, I'm probably safe, but for the coming generations, they are not, and I see it now, and they really see the need to do something. And then again, this is about stakeholder communication. So for the board directors to be mindful what's going out there, what are the trends, how are they thinking? The latest news is that the Gen Z, they don't want to lead, they don't want to be led, they don't want to lead.
Right.
How is that impacting your company. If they don't want to lead, perhaps your company won't have a leader in 10 years or 30 years from now. But then again, someone said, well, if it's those of the Gen Z who shouldn't lead anyways, then it's a good thing. And then we keep those, the best leaders. So then it could be a good thing. But this is the discussion that you have to be engaged in as a board member to see how this play out in the future.
Yeah.
So yeah, what more can we say about the stakeholder communication? How do you do that? How do you communicate with a wider group? And so to start with acknowledging that, but also to define what are your key stakeholder groups? Who? Because it's not everybody. So, and I guess that it should be your target groups or your customers first and foremost, but then also again, what kind of regulations are you affected by? What kind of politicians should you speak to? Who should you have views and perspectives from other than you have on your board already? And perhaps, perhaps we want to ask that later, but this has also to do with what kind of diversity do you have on your board? Have you make sure, of course, you have the gender balance in order? Do you have representatives from different age groups? Do you have representatives from different backgrounds, etc., etc.? And as I said, the boardroom isn't big enough for all kinds of diversity, but you need to have some kind, and then you need to know what kind of diversity is necessary for my company now.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
So you mentioned about the future, and I guess given how quickly ESG expectations are evolving, does your competence program kind of future-proof board directors and give them the tools that they need to stay ahead, both in regulatory requirements, but also the stakeholder demands? Yeah,
and this is the beauty, I say, of this program, because we are constantly changing it. It's not a fixed curriculum. We're changing it for every season. We're changing, we keep some of the speakers, and we bring in new speakers, and we bring in new topics. And of course, as I mentioned, the King 5 report obviously hasn't been on the agenda before, but it definitely will be when we come to the autumn. And the updated OECD principles for corporate governance. When that was launched, we invited representatives from the OECD to come and present the highlights of this report, and where you can find more information. So this is how we believe that we future-proof the boards, and also we would like them to continue participating in this. So in addition to inviting individual board members, we encourage companies to subscribe to an annual license where the board members can continue to participate, and they can go in and out of the webinars, and they will always have all the material available. And when new board members come in, they can just continue or attend the program. So this is continuous evolving, and it's continuous development. And I think that's one of the key things about the program. We need to be on the forefront all the time. And our knowledge, what I knew yesterday may be too old today. What I knew mid-January doesn't hold anymore. So we need to always to continuously update ourselves. And in many jurisdictions, it has not been common for board members to have training and to expand their knowledge, because as a board member, you were expected to know it all. You were expected when you came on board, oh, I'm a seasoned, I have been the CEO of these large industrial companies, and this is the icing on my career cake. So I will sit in this boardroom and I will do my best and share my experience. And that is not enough anymore. It is good to have the experience, of course, but it's even better to have the foresight of what's happening next.
Yeah. Thanks, Turid. I've just noticed there's some questions popped up, and the first one was asking which international ESG certification do we recommend? And I'll just before we go on to answer that, one thing you've just said about things being continually evolving. I think with traditional certificate programs, there's always the danger that these things are cyclical, so they'll go 1 or 2 years before being refreshed. So some of the kind of the common certification institutions out there, this is something where they can't keep up. So a program like this one, where the content is continually being evolved based on what's happening in the real world, this is something I think is really important. So I think if you're looking for a certificate and a badge in something, it's just be mindful that the content is current, and because the last thing you want to do is learn about something that doesn't even isn't relevant anymore.
And you're pointing to a very crucial topic, because after 2 sessions of these sessions we had, and so we thought, oh, how long should this certificate be valid?
Right.
When do you have to renew that? And for auditors, yeah, you have fixed programs, and they know you have to constantly renew them. So we decided, well, 2 years at the most, and then you have to refresh it, because things happen so rapid, and yeah, perhaps at one point 1 year would be enough. At the other point it could be 3 years, but you have to continuously update your knowledge.
With people that go through the course, so you go through the course now, and you kind of pass, or you get your certificate, but do you do any kind of refresh, or do you have like a community where people have gone through this program, you then advise them these are updates that you should probably be aware of?
Well, we don't do that on a regular basis, but we do invite them always to the new programs that they continue to attend.
Right.
And also to obtain that certificate, you have to fill in, we call it a reflection form, to make sure, because these are live webinars. We're running live webinars, and if you're not able to attend on that specific time, or if you want to listen to the webinars again, we will provide the recordings, so you can listen to that, and you can still have your certificate even if you didn't attend the live webinar, but just by listening to the recording. But then we want to make sure you actually listen to it. So we are asking for reflections on different topics on this. It's not an exam, but it is. We just want to know that you really listened, and didn't just push the play button and then went for a coffee. Hopefully not.
Well, those kind of reflections are nice though, because when you do an exam, often these things are focused on terminology and things like this that aren't really that practical in the real world. So it's not really testing something that's going to benefit you. So the reflections, I guess that's much more practical. So if you've understand the principles of things, and that's going to be demonstrated in those reflections. Yeah.
Of course, we could ask what is the definition of CS, what does CSRD stand for?
Yeah.
But you could always Google that.
Exactly.
And of course, for the reflection, you could always ask ChatGPT, but that wouldn't be very interesting for yourself or anyone else.
There's another question here from Monwa. She says, who should be the custodian in the organization of ESG? Should it be risk management or compliance or the ethics management?
Oh, that's been a discussion, but I'd say that there's no one custodian of ESG. It's integrated in everything. That's the core goal of it. So I don't know. Companies have different views on this. There are different views on whether you should have an ESG committee on your board. The danger is then that, well, talking about ESG is those people. So the rest of us will talk of something else. It is a bit similar to the discussion we had with the digital competence on board and digital strategies. And it was like, oh, wow, do we have to have digital competence on board? And by the way, what is it really? And it is a bit the same about the sustainability discussion and the ESG, that it has to be totally integrated.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, you don't really believe it.
Mm.
Then you can have some experts in your company who knows more, and then you have the reporting competence, those who knows everything about the reporting frameworks. And I know of one financial director. He actually calls himself the CVO now, not the CFO. I mean,
Right.
and he was fighting with the communication department to have responsibility of the sustainability report.
Mm.
And he finally got that. So he,
Right.
the communication director, I think she quit. So it went to financial department. But this is, I think just the discussion is good to have this debate in the boardroom. Who is really taking care of this? Is it a separate issue still, or do we have it integrated? How do we work? So yeah, so thanks for the question.
Yeah, I definitely think having a committee that is representational of the company, of the organization as a whole, is the best way for these things, because as soon as you assign something to someone, that becomes a silo, and then everyone just assumes it's their responsibility and that no one else really has too much of a role to play in that. So I think your mention of a committee is definitely a great idea.
Mm.
We have another question here from Christopher. It says, do you have a formal competency framework to guide the curriculum development framework? It would be interesting to view an industry-tested competency curriculum framework informing the competency development initiatives.
Wow, the answer is no. No, we don't. We really don't. I think that the whole program is founded on bringing different perspectives in. Because the textbook on ESG is not written yet, and probably never will be, probably never should be, because this is changing all the time. So what we are focusing on, bringing in the perspective from the regulators, from the investors, from board members themselves. When we talk about board competencies and composition, we will bring in chairs of nomination committees to listening. What are they looking for? How hard is it? Things like that. So no, there's no specific format on how we work on this. So we're focusing on the 3 modules of the program, which is based on the work of the board and responsibilities of the board. So the responsibility is, of course, the strategy. How does the ESG agenda affect the board's work, how they work with the strategy, the work processes, and how they have to change the thinking. So it's mostly about the mindset. And then it's about the board competence and the composition. So that is the module number 2. And then we bring in also recruitment companies to talk about what they are seeing in their industries and the developments that's going on there. And then the third and the last one is about the reporting and the control. So all of this goes to what are the responsibilities of the board, and how do they do that? And perhaps more specifically, how does the ESG agenda changes the board's work within these different companies? So it's not about reporting as such, but it's reporting in an ESG context.
Right. Okay. Just for anyone listening, I saw a question or a comment pop up earlier about will there be any slides to accompany this webinar. What we will do is provide a summary of everything we've gone through following the call. The webinar is posted onto YouTube, so you can watch it through. But what we will also do is provide those modules that Tura just mentioned. We'll provide an overview of those modules, and all that information will be up on the website. So if you want to find out more about this competence program, what's involved, kind of what steps are there, that will all be up on the website following the webinar. So there'll be more detail that you can look at.
There's also a specific website for the program. It's called esgforboards.com.
Right.
Yeah, you can just log into that and hopefully find as much information as you need.
Yeah, no, a link to the website will also be shared on the GGA, so we'll make sure people can find that course and the overview. We've got another question here. With the current attack on the DEI initiatives, how do we ensure that good representation in the social or environmental components in societies and countries where affected societies are not shareholders or management teams?
Not sure I got that. In countries where...
So how do we ensure good representation in the social or environmental components in the societies or countries where affected societies are not necessarily shareholders of boards or management teams?
So how we can assure... I'm not sure if I grasped the question.
I guess the people that are impacted are not those same people that we'll find on the boards. So how do we ensure that those are represented?
Oh, you can't represent everybody on the boards, but you need to make sure that the boards are mindful of these representations in society. It's a trickle-down process, I'd say. And also, I'd say there's a big responsibility for companies that are based abroad, like Norwegian companies in other jurisdictions, should make sure that the values and the principles that we are guided by in the Norwegian context also are followed to other countries, taking into account, national regulatory and etc. But I'm not sure if that answered your question. But again, I'm not sure if I understood the question correctly.
No, I think you did, and I think what you've said is makes sense that you can't have everyone represented on the board. The board do need to know or be aware of what society they are ultimately impacting and representing. So I guess we just need to make sure the board are cognizant of that and are kept informed. And I guess it's up to the rest of the company to ensure that the board are aware of these things. So yeah, I guess that's the only way you can.
Yeah, because if they're not necessarily represented on the board or the management team, they would probably be employees of the company.
Yeah, exactly.
And then that would be the responsibility of the board.
Yeah. We have another question here. Given the evolving corporate landscape outlined in the King 5 draft, which of the highlighted competencies among ethical leadership, strategic foresight, stakeholder engagement, technological proficiency, or diversity do you believe will be the most critical for business leaders in 2025, and why?
Foresight, I'd say. And to have foresight, you need to have insight.
Yeah.
So I'd say that, and to have, I don't know if that's specified in the King 5 report, but to have the curiosity and the fantasy to broaden your mind and think what might come. And I've had very good experience with scenario thinking. And the scenario thinking is like, okay, can this happen? Can that happen? Can this happen? And what are the drivers to bring us there? And probably none of the scenarios would be completely true or completely happening. But that makes you see what might come in front of us. Some of us anticipated not me, the COVID. Some of us anticipated what would happen now with the new president, because they say he's actually doing exactly what he said he would be doing. So to imagine how this will play out in the future. And then, of course, all the other things are important, but foresight, curiosity.
Strategic foresight, yeah.
And also, just add one thing, the ability to speak up.
Right.
If you don't, it doesn't matter how much foresight or insight or competence or anything you have, if you don't speak up.
Yeah, which is interesting how often that doesn't happen within boards. There's someone that leads the discussion and other people don't speak up, and that's often could have avoided, catastrophes, or at least things that could have gone better. So
yeah, and sometimes it's because I'm probably not that smart, and I have to say, or no, this is not relevant, and that is to the chair again, to create that atmosphere that you actually can speak up, and then you can hear your thoughts. Like, oh, I'm worried about this, or I think perhaps that. you should be able to do that. So perhaps board meetings should be longer and not as strict and formal as they are.
Yeah. We have a final question currently from Wesley. How does your ESG program differ from mainstream governance certifications like the ICD and those related to ESG, like the Competent Boards program based over in Canada?
Yeah, the Canadian, I'm not sure, I haven't looked at, I know Hella Bakkjørgens very well, and we've been speaking. She, as I see, she has divided this to talk about the E and the S and the G. So you actually come from different perspectives in, and I think you can benefit from both and do both of them. And the ESG for Boards program does not aim to be a generic board competence program. It's focused on the ESG agenda and how that changes the way boards work and are composed. That's the core of it. So I think you can easily benefit from all those training sessions, because all of them will give you different perspectives and different competences.
Okay. Thanks, Turid. So we've come to the end of those questions actually, and I see we've almost come to the end of the session. So I did want to ask a couple more questions myself actually. And one is, when you've been going through this program, have there been any takeaways that have surprised participants the most? Something that you've taught them in the course, and it's kind of really been a light bulb moment.
Yes, absolutely, and that goes mostly to the mind shift. Marvin is of course one of the speakers. And he always lights the light bulb for people when he's speaking. So that is actually about, okay, we have to think differently about this. I should also mention we do like company tailor-made sessions, like workshops. And after one of those workshops, the board, because we had 3-4 hours of workshop, and then they went to the board meeting. And then the message was, oh, wow, we had a totally different board meeting.
Right.
We discussed it in a different way. We behaved differently.
Yeah.
So I think that was a spin-off we didn't anticipate, but it's a good thing, because it changed the way the board was, the dialogue in the board and with the management. Because that's also an important factor when we want companies to subscribe. We also want the management team to be a part of it. So we see when we have whole boards and their management team coming to this program, then they have a common platform to discuss these issues.
Right. So based on that finding, if there was some advice that you could offer boards in terms of ESG, one little tip that that would just benefit them going into those board meetings, what would you say that is?
Join the program. That would be the first of. Now, you should, as a board member, ask for more information, more relevant information, more about the trends, and especially what are the trends affecting our company? Because board members, they would be board members of many different companies and in different industries. So there would be different things for an oil and gas producer than it would be from some textile company. And it was always different. So they should ask more about what is specific for this company, for our company now and in the foreseeable future.
Well, what would you say the biggest ESG risk is that tends to get overlooked?
Like one of the risks. As I said, when we're talking about environment and biodiversity, etc., most companies and board directors are painfully aware of what is happening. Now there is a discussion whether we should drill for more oil or not, and how that should be done. But I think also the social factors, the workers' rights, the labor conditions. We talk a lot about D&I, so that's been high on the agenda. But the workers' rights and how do you deal with that in different jurisdictions, different cultures? How does this play out? And then to me, and of course this is one the topic I'm most passionate about, and that is the G, the governance. It tends to be like, oh, it's the E and S, and then it's the G. So, and what is the G? And so that's what I would focus on, is the G.
If anyone's looking at joining the program, are there any kind of prerequisites? Do you invite anyone onto this course?
Anyone can apply. We prefer that people have some, to some extent, some board experience, because it starts on a higher level. It doesn't start with the basic. So you need to know how the board works, and the compositions, and the ecosystem,
right.
the eco-governance system. So that would be, but anyone can apply. And if you report to a board, if you're a board secretary, if you're a board, the CFO, and of course the top management, everyone who reports to the board or plan to present to the board, like the sustainability officers. And we do get lots and lots of attention from sustainability officers, because they say we come and present to the board and they don't understand what we're talking about.
Right.
So they want boards to be more knowledgeable about these things.
Wonderful. Okay, well, look, thanks so much, Turid. It's been a real pleasure talking to you this afternoon, and I hope the audience have found some value in this. It's been nice that we've kind of discussed ESG as a topic, and obviously been able to point to the way that your program can benefit, people that want to know more about ESG and how it can impact their organization. So thanks so much for joining us today, and thanks so much to the audience for joining us. As I mentioned earlier, full details will be on our website, and we will point you through to Turid's FutureBoards website. So all of the details will be there. And as I say, the webinar will be posted up on YouTube, and we'll be providing a summary of that for anyone that didn't have a chance to go through. So thank you again, Turid, and thank you again to our audience, and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Thanks for inviting me, and I hope to see all 143 of you at the ESG
sure.
program.
I'm sure they will.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thanks so much, Turid. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.